Wonder if we'll get the eyeball today.
So lucky.
Hello and welcome to episode 199 of Dualistic Unity Raw. Wow, 199 live episodes. And that doesn't even include the quote-unquote social episodes or the fact that we are now pretty much recording every episode live, the groups, any of that. It's just so funny, because with all of this growth of Dualistic Unity, there's also required growth from everybody involved. And that includes me. I mean, being this exposed, this vulnerable, disconnected with everybody is, I'm not going to say difficult, but yeah, I am. I'm going to say difficult. It can be challenging, I guess is what I'm saying, is that there's a lot of emotions that go into jumping into the unknown, with pushing past your thoughts that you shouldn't do this, or somebody might judge you for doing this, or you're not enough to do it, or somebody else might do it better, or any of that stuff. You do that and you keep doing that because the other option is to get lost in your head and self-limitation. But that doesn't mean it's always fun. And it doesn't mean it's always enjoyable, because it is just what it is. At the end of the day, it's really about letting go of your opinion of it, rather than putting your opinion over the experience and then it just experiencing your opinion. And so you let the opinion go and you keep going, and you see where you're holding on to stuff, and you let it go, and you see where you're judging yourself, and you try to stop, or at least recognize why, and you carry on. And that's life in a nutshell. But it's so important to recognize that sometimes you're going to feel tired. You're going to feel worn out. You're going to feel like you've just been facing all of this for so long, and you just want to rest. You just want to break from being responsible, from having to pay attention. And it's the kind of tired that you can't sleep off. It's not the kind of tired that goes away through rest. But it is the kind of tired, I should say. It is the kind of tired that goes away through recognizing that you're not really, that the pendulum is just swinging in terms of enthusiasm versus this lingering idea that you can't keep going, that you don't have the strength, that it's more than you can do. And that's all it is. It's just a lingering idea. And then it drifts out of your attention, and you end up back in the enthusiasm that goes with being present. But that fatigue is normal. Don't fight it. Don't judge yourself for it. Just accept you're pushing yourself in ways that you've never pushed yourself before. You're putting yourself on the brink of reality all the time. And that's not something we're used to doing. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of quote-unquote fatigue, but it's not the fatigue of a body that can't take it. It's the fatigue of a mind that is used to thinking it can't take it.
Yeah, those opinions, it's like once you start looking at them, looking at those perspectives, realizing that the opinions, the preferences, they are yours, they're entirely yours, and you can kind of live your life holding on to those, not even dabbling a little bit into opinion and preference, and wondering if that's really, the best thing to lead you, to guide your decisions, whether you really have to take them seriously or not. And so you can take them seriously and take all of them very seriously, and then you're always going to be almost at the mercy and the fluctuation, because it's reflective too. Your opinions about yourself, your opinions about reality, your experience, all of it, they're all kind of tied together in a sense. And so you can't have one without the other. You can't have opinions of certain things without them being reflected in yourself, because you're just seeing yourself, you're just interacting with yourself, you're just dealing with your own sense of even ownership of specific, opinions, preferences, choosing, assuming that you know the best way to live life, to live your life, and then, expressing that as like, no, this is the best way to live life, period. And like, you must believe that in order to believe that you're living life the right way. But as soon as you start looking at those opinions and preferences and see, oh, these are just ways that things that I use to like keep a buffer towards fully paying attention. It's like I can kind of cloud the attention by overlaying opinions and preferences that are totally irrelevant. They don't matter at all. And so when you stop taking them so seriously, it's like it can feel like there's a sense of like unraveling almost. Like you start to see all those opinions and how often they'll pop up and how much they've kind of directed your choices, your responses to certain things based on an opinion of it that was then kind of dictating your behavior because you didn't realize how much you just like weren't looking at the opinion itself. But as you start looking at them, they start popping up, and there's almost this, process of continuing to look, because once you see that like they're not the driving, they're not necessarily the thing that means you're gonna know how to live life best or know the best way to live, or they don't have to be that guiding light. Like they don't have to be at the forefront. But then, looking at them, realizing that, and not digging into them or responding how you typically would, like that doesn't always feel great. It doesn't always feel good necessarily to realize, to look at that, and yet looking at it and being honest about it and then doing something about them, like that's where it's like kind of you get back to that enthusiasm, because like you don't have to take them seriously, because as much as they're you hold on to them about the world and reality, they're all about yourself too. Your experience is going to reflect how tightly you're holding on to those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Because, I love the saying, the best things in life are unexpected because there were no expectations. And I love how true that feels. I don't know if there has ever been a time where even when an expectation was met, if I would consider that one of the best moments or best experiences. And I think the saying is driving at the lack of expectation left room for surprise, left room for wonder, for curiosity. The lack of expectation gave more room for potential instead of taking up more room with a description or an opinion, because that's what it feels like. It's shifting that division of space. How much space is being taken up by that opinion, by that assumption, and how much space, quote unquote, is left over for potential. Because there are times where we feel like we're so sure, and in that certainty there's little room for anything else.
Isn't that funny though? Like even the perception of just being tired. It's one of those things. There's a comfort to it. There's a comfort to the idea that you can just take a break. But the reality is that you never really are. Like we complain about limitation, but we kind of like our limitation. Even when I'm doing great, just kicking along through life enthusiastic, there's a part of me that almost misses being tired from time to time, of not feeling like I have to be up at the forefront in connection with everything, actively engaged. And I don't. I don't have to do that. And I know that, but I'm still doing that. Even when I'm not actively engaged with everyone else, I'm engaged with myself. And there's no weight to it. I think that's the bitch about this, is the fact that the only reason that I'm feeling tired right now is frankly because I've been reflecting on my journey. And that's what it is. I've been reflecting backwards because, as everyone knows, I'm turning 45 this weekend, and that's all. I'm just looking at all of the things that I've gone through and the experiences I've had, and what I thought they meant about me, and then in hindsight, just looking at how much I've let go of, and I find all of that just fascinating because you look at all that, and suddenly there's this sense of, oh wow, just keep going. But there's almost like a resignation to it, and there's no point to that. There's no reason for that resignation. There's almost no reason at all to be like, because life is awesome.
Mhm.
Life is full and intense, and it's exciting, and it's challenging, and it's fully engaging you, and there's no
Worthwhile.
limitation there. There's no limitation. You can just keep living that way. And yet part of me is just like, right, but I would almost miss that life where I get tired. I'd almost miss that life where I can feel like it's too much because it's familiar. It's another story. And what would exist without the story? And it's fascinating to me because, man, sometimes I feel like I can just go on and on and on and on. And then I'll have like a week like this one where I'll get lost in self-reflection, and all of a sudden I feel like I've been here forever as opposed to being eternal. Because being eternal is almost like a continuous refreshment. Every moment is its own experience. You're not dragging any of the past with you. The alternative is that you feel like you've been here forever, which has its own lessons and its own beauty and all of that. But there's the duality again, because they're both true and neither.
As you move through, it's like everything is new. So even that sense of, knowing going into something, like trying to know something, holding on to some expectation, it's like you can't have both. You can't keep, driving, looking through the windshield and feel like you know what's going to be next, because then you're going to keep looking over your shoulder into the rear view mirror as you keep going. And so like you can't have both. The guarantee, that sense of certainty, that sense of knowing, how things are going, how you're doing. It's like very much, pushing through this unknown, very unknown feeling thing, but then there also isn't the expectation of it being something. It's like dropping both, but like holding on to one and then continuing to face, it's like kind of the let go or be dragged
Very much.
sort of feeling. And as you continue on, it's like it's exhilarating, it's like incredible, exciting, like so full. But if you're dragging yourself along, focusing, self-reflecting, kind of wondering constantly how you're doing, it's like every single moment is going to feel like so much is on the line all the time, because you're trying to maintain this sense of controlling yourself, even knowing yourself. Like, so it's not even just a here and there kind of feeling. It's like there's this, it'll be involved in every situation, that sense of, maintaining control and like trying to think your way to like acting the right way and using your mind to do that. Like it's going to create so much friction and tension in yourself. Like it's reflected in your experience. Like you're going to feel it in everything that you do, your own hesitations, your own willingness to express yourself. And the more you hold on to that sense of like maintenance of what you've always thought that you were, because that's all the past, that's all behind you. Like you can't maintain a sense of who you are, what you're doing as you continue to push through uncertainty, the unknown. Like each moment, each step is brand fucking new. Like you can try and make it feel like it's the same moment over again, but it's still not. And the more you focus on trying to make it the same or look the same or maintain that sense of control and sameness and repetitiveness, it's never going to be the same. But you're convincing yourself is going to be where a lot of that friction is. Like, no, it's the same, but it's not. And there's a conflict there versus being willing to just know that you can't curate the same situation twice. You can't be in the same situation twice. The way that a situation is going can't be happening in the same way twice, because that goes both ways. You come up to a familiar situation in which you felt certain emotions, feeling like felt worried, afraid, nervous. Like it's not the same situation as it was the last time you faced it either. And so you don't necessarily have to run towards a familiar response to the situation, because it's also just as new as you are facing it.
Yeah, it's interesting because you were talking about how the moment being eternal, it's always refreshing. And so it's so hard to say that something is old when it's constantly new. And we do that all the time. It's like, no, this is not eternity. This is the past. No. Not just the past, also the future. It's just, and we're putting these old concepts on this constantly renewing, endless source, expression, unfolding of potential. And I think I love words, right? And the reason why I'm jumping to that is because as much as I love words, words are both meaningful and meaningless. And the words are great. They're tools. They're there and concepts. We can use them, but it's just not the only thing that's there. It's not the only focus. It's not the only priority. So as much as I love words, I also know that words are incredibly limited because they're concepts. And so to use a limited thing to describe a limitless thing sounds like, do it for the fun of it, but don't do it because it sounds like it. You can't, it doesn't need to be done. Not that it's not doable, but it just doesn't need to be done. Because if we're describing something that's limitless, I don't think that the actual goal should be to describe the limitless through something that just feels and could only be limited, right? Because you use one word and then there's cultural context and there's specific individual context and there's people have different connotations. It's like one word has infinite definitions. So if we know that words and concepts have infinite perspectives that they could be viewed from, taken, that's why the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Because it doesn't matter what the intention is, it's going to have all the ripples. And all the ripples are going to go in all the directions. So you can't just pick one direction for your ripples, for the ripples that you make. And so that's why I love words, but they're not supposed to be the be all end all. The words are just there for play. It's just Play-Doh on this table, and we can use them to make different cool shapes. But then we don't need to take those shapes as being something to be afraid of or to focus on or try to define it. It's just another toy. It's just another tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, we're just doing things with things. Like it is like all of this experience is kind of like, being in a sandbox in a sense, like there is this open-endedness to things, situations, and like the more you assume that it is something or it should be something or other people in the sandbox should be acting certain ways or going beyond just like your experience, your creations, your focus on, frustration if you build some sort of structure and then something comes along and happens to it, and then you're able to then remake something new. And each and every day, like you have the potential to like wipe the slate clean. Each and every moment you have the potential to wipe the slate clean, but like that goes with all of it. Like every assumption, every perspective, every opinion, like you can wipe those. Like you have that option, but there's no sense of like me doing things right or well or correctly. But it is an option to recognize that, oh, these are all stemming from me. I can try and assume that like someone else is doing something or thinking something or acting a certain way because of a certain thing, but like it's all stemming from yourself. Like it's all stemming from you. All the ripples, all the assumptions, all the perspectives, all the perceptions, all the opinions, like they're just yours. And you don't have to put those in front of your experience. Like you can just wipe them. Like that is an option, but it goes with all of them, and just live with that, blank slate, carte blanche every day.
Now, that's an argument that people will often make, though, when you say that is, well, if I get rid of my past, how can I use all the information that I learned in that past? And really what we're doing is saying that the past or the moments that you've went through have always shown you potential perceptions that always exist, right? They always exist, but our brain says, well, no, this moment is similar to a past moment, therefore I'm going to rely on information from the past. But that's just us convincing ourselves it's the same. As you said, it's not at all. So people are like, well, I've learned from the past, shouldn't I use that to move forward? Yes and no. You've learned that there are perceptions of the moment that are optional to you, but to go, therefore I should use the same perception, therefore I should use the lesson previously because this moment's very similar, that's a danger. That's always a danger. But the alternative is to be in the moment and uncertain all the time. And there was an argument recently between Jordan Peterson and someone else. I don't remember who. It might have been that podcaster Destiny.
Yeah.
I think it might have been. And Destiny was saying something along the lines like, you do operate under trust in the system. Like you do operate without questioning every single thing.
Yeah.
And Peterson was saying like, no, not necessarily. And the counter argument was, well, when you get in your car, you get in the car assuming it's going to continue to operate as it did last time and not just combust. But what's funny about that argument is that, to me, that just shows a lack of responsibility on Destiny's part, because when you're taught to drive, they tell you to check your tires before you get in the car, to look at all the displays, to actually do your own due diligence to make sure the vehicle isn't going to explode or break down. They don't tell you assume it'll be fine. They don't in any way tell you to assume it'll be fine. It's just that we do. It's not that it's necessary. It's just uncomfortable to constantly live in a state of mind when you're going, well, I don't know. I'm going to have to take the time, regardless of how much I'm rushing, to get somewhere that means something about me to do this thing.
Right.
That's the point. I don't want to do that. I don't want to take that time. I'm too fucking busy focused on my story.
Or I do bulk attention where like, as long as I bring my car to the mechanic every 2,000 miles, I'm like, we're good.
Exactly.
That's totally me. Like in this real world example, like how I would do it was like, no, I wasn't always checking every time I got in the car, but I trusted that regular maintenance, that periodic attention regularly, was enough, that I could trust my mechanics to tell me that the car was in a good enough state to make it for the next 2,000 miles, and filling up the gas tank when it was at a quarter of a tank so that it was never too low, and making sure that, I was always maintaining little bits and things, but I was not popping the hood every time we were driving that car. Let me tell you.
Well, that's most of the times like that attention, because even with interactions with people too, it's like assuming people always have good intentions. That assumption, it's like it can feel like, oh, that's like a good thing to do, a nice thing to do, but like you're just not paying attention. Like it's an alternative to paying attention and recognizing that someone who is trying to be nice, like that is a manipulative tactic, like wanting to be a good person, wanting to be a nice person, wanting to be seen in a certain way. Like they're going to try and show you something. And that's like oftentimes on top of like what's actually going on. And so if you are assuming going into something, assuming anything about a situation, assuming how a situation is going to go because you feel like you've been in it before, it's like there's not a guarantee, like in any moment ever. And we've talked about how much we've kind of baby-proofed society, so we have to just pay less and less attention.
Attention-proofed
Yeah.
society.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry, we got this.
Yeah, and so like we feel like we don't have to pay attention necessarily to a lot of things, to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like we can still get away with living, but we kind of discount our experience, like our own experience, because like paying attention, it like goes hand in hand with being self-honest and noticing things in yourself, recognizing things in yourself, letting things go, seeing where you have tendencies to like act certain ways, respond in certain ways. But then it's like there's a benefit to being responsible. Like there's a ton of potential lightness there, but it's on you, and it doesn't mean that it's like feeling good all the time. It's like not having so many opinions, like period.
Right. I don't know if it's just, I mean, feeling good, yes, but it just in this moment I am feeling both. I don't even know, like I feel so much, like there's just so much feeling in this moment, and very easily I can lean towards the excitement and the enthusiasm, and I can lean towards the fear and the insecurities, and I can lean towards being more sensitive, and it just feels like there's so much feeling, right? And so I assumed that there wasn't enough space, and I assumed that when you felt something you only felt that one thing. And so lately I have been feeling contradictory feelings at the same time. And it doesn't make sense how those things are happening and being felt to some degree at the same time. I'm feeling nervous and excited, not or, both. And yet it just like...
And you choose which one you focus on.
You do.
But that's the duality of every moment. And I've said this previously, that the majority, I would even say that the core or the crux of what we consider to be our emotional spectrum is really based on the reality of being alone and the two perceptions of that. Because there's joy at the freedom of it and sadness at the isolation of it. It's the same as being the present moment, the constant changing present moment. There is joy that every moment is new potential, and there's sadness that every moment will never be seen again.
Yeah.
Right?
A joyful morning.
This is it. This is life, though. This is why our podcast is appropriately called Dualistic Unity, is because the experience of unity is the experience of duality, right? But we get so fixated on one side or the other while we try to identify ourselves as being on one side or the other, that we cut ourselves off from all of it, from the entire feeling. And this ties into a question that somebody asked here in the comments section. Is there always a reason for an action? I find myself sometimes doing things and not understanding why. Could it just be because I don't understand myself? I would say that is an interesting question in a number of ways. The self that you're trying to understand isn't the self that you're thinking about, which makes it very tricky. And there's even more in terms of epiphenomenalism, the fact that you are already going to do the thing, and then your thought takes ownership of that thing. Like you're going to push the button, and then your brain's like, I'm going to push the button after the fact. Epiphenomenalism, definitely check it out, because it's just fascinating. But that aside, there's also what we're saying here about the emotional spectrum. Like you are experiencing things, and you are experiencing biases and fears and insecurities and all kinds of underlying stuff all the time, and it is influencing you. It's influencing your choices. It's influencing your actions. But there's so much happening there that to be consistently aware of all of it is unreasonable, which is why it's so dangerous to say, I'm feeling this because of this.
Right.
It might make you feel better in the short term, but you're discounting a lot of background process, a lot of the complexity that you are in doing so, and possibly cutting off a bunch of insights that you could be learning just by going, no, it's absolutely this. I don't need to keep looking anymore. It's that.
It has been decided. All in favor, say yeah.
But that said, and I want to follow this up, perhaps you don't need to worry about the reason. Perhaps you just need to worry about the intention. And by worry, I mean just pay attention to your intention in what you're doing. You know, whether or not you are focused on the story of yourself and distracted, or if you're actually clear-minded and paying attention to where you are. I think that's going to dictate a lot of the experience that you have. And I would say that reasons are overrated.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to emotional content, especially when it comes to doing things. I mean, you could have a bunch of reasons, but who are you justifying it to? Outside of some fictional person that's judging you. And if there is no fictional person judging you, if there is no judgment, then there does not have to be a reason. Empathy is enough to guide your actions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of times that a lot of the action can feel like it's a habit too or something, but there's, you know, as you were saying, there's like underlying stuff informing those habits, reasons, things, a lot of it focused around yourself, you know, trying to maintain something and trying to maintain the same, like you being the same. And like if you you know, sit back a little bit and look at your life, like to assume that you would possibly be the same throughout your life, so attempting to maintain that, like it's futile. Like it wouldn't be, it's exciting that you can be like a different person throughout your entire life, like every single day, like based on the moment, based on the experience, like you can show up as whatever you are, and like you don't have to have borders.
But then how do I establish my value?
See, you can't know that as well. You can't hold on to that because you'll never know that. You'll never know how you're doing. You
need to.
Yeah. And you can assume you're on one end of the spectrum or the other, like super values super high or values super low, and neither of them are ever going to be the truth. Like you're never going to know what that point is. And so without that, then things open up a little bit more. There isn't so much need to, you know, hold on so tightly with so much rigidity.
Mm-hmm. I like thinking of a forest when I think of, or when the concept of value comes to mind. I like to give myself the analogy of a forest, because in the forest, nothing is more valuable than anything else. And that's kind of straightforward. It's pretty clear to see that when you walk into a forest, when you walk into this landscape that's covered in different trees and bushes and animals, no one seems to think that they're better than anyone else. No plant seems to be like, all right, I get 90% of sunlight, fuck the rest of you. You're going to have to divide that 10% and figure it out. I have full access to the river. Like, it just doesn't seem like anything is really in comparison. It doesn't need to be. And, you know, things are just making sense. It's just that things don't have to have a value that's confirmed. And I feel that we could adopt that same, you know, consideration that there doesn't need to be a measurement of value, that life is just inherently valuable, that every moment, that potential is inherently valuable. You don't have to make it valuable. There's value in it because there's potential. And in that potential is the magnificent exploration of all the directions that could go in, and how technically in every moment potential is doing everything it could be. It's all of existence is already here. Where would you need to find value other than in this moment right now? It seems like so shocking how this moment being enough needed to be something to digest. And I'm still digesting that, because there are so many times where, you know, we're chasing a carrot, we're chasing a concept, we're chasing an accomplishment, we're trying to prove ourselves, we're trying to prove our value, we're deciding, is this action make sense? Is it strategic? Is the lack of action, does it make sense? You know, I was judging lack of action as laziness, as not being, you know, because I was a hard worker and I identified myself and I knew what I was and I knew who I was and I knew what this person was supposed to do. And yet that didn't feel like it not necessarily worked, but it just did not deliver. Having these ideas, having these assumptions, having these opinions, the more I focus on them, the more I prioritize them, the more I can see that they do not deliver on the promise of certainty, on the promise of control that was in some way bought and sold to myself. So, the lack of action feels like it's just something that also is, because think of the example of going to the gym. Some people think that the days that they're in the gym lifting the actual weights that's the most productive time. That's when they're building their muscles. Actually, that's not the case. Your muscles are built on your rest days, on the days where you are not actually lifting a weight, on the days that you are not productive, or the actual moments where the muscle is really being built. But the assumption is that my time in the gym is more important than my time not at the gym. And it's not that one is more important than the other, it's that they're both one reflection of this moment. It's just the weight. You can pick up the weight, and when the weight is not being picked up, existence is still happening, and existence is never more or less. But the perspective and the opinion certainly is quite convincing. And if that's all you are zoomed in on, then that seems to be all that there is.
Yeah, it's like you can't see beyond that if you think that's all there is. If you think there's anything about it that could even have any degree of truth, like you could possibly even, label anything properly, like period, like whatsoever. There's nothing that you could possibly adequately label in any way, shape, or form. And I think, with the working out stuff, like it's kind of, that was the process of life you were talking about earlier. Like we go to the gym, do the work, get the reps in. Doesn't feel great necessarily, but you take care of your stuff, you do your thing. Yeah, get a little pump as you're going, maybe. But it's like, are you focused on building strength, or are you focused on looking good as you go? Like there's different ways that
what's the priority?
We do things. Yeah, exactly. Is it about what's going to inform my experience, or is it going to be about looking the best and getting the the big arms and whatnot? But then it's equally as important to step away, like not constantly be in the gym or assume that you should.
There's only one way.
Always be going through things. Exactly. Like even throughout a day, that like you're having a rough day today. It's like it's not a thing that you have to keep carrying with you through the day. Like there is no guarantee that like what's happened has to dictate what's happening next.
Right.
But that sense of like taking that previous step and putting it in front of you, it's like letting that drop a little bit and stepping into that, being willing to admit that like you're stepping in uncertainty anyway. So like you can try and hold on to stuff, but like that's just going to get in your way. And so like you don't have to, because either way it's still going to be unknown, uncertain. So it's like you holding on to stuff will just kind of slow you down, get in your way, make it tougher to like handle the uncertainty when it shows up. It doesn't make it easier.
Well, and again, and convince you that you're tired when in reality, you're almost making yourself tired to maintain the story that you can be tired of being life in general. Isn't that interesting? I wanted to say quickly, I feel great. I feel way better. Again, refreshed. And it really is just that process of just kind of going, oh yeah, I'm making this heavy. And that's it. And not judging yourself for it, because that also makes it heavy. Doesn't help whatsoever, but it can be that if you stop expecting it to be anything.
Yeah.
And just be where you are. We have a little bit of time left here, so I wanted to mention very quickly that the Port Alberni tickets are now publicly available. You can go to dualisticulunity.com. In the events drop-down menu, you will see the 2024 Port Alberni retreat. Check out the information. All the details are there. We're going to be on Vancouver Island from November 2nd to November 10th. The tickets cover your meals. It covers your substances. It covers a chef. We have live music, yoga. We go for walks in a couple of provincial parks. This is one of the most beautiful islands in the world, by the way. If you haven't been to Vancouver Island, check it out. It's fantastic. And we're going whale watching this time around. It's going to be a hell of an experience. This is going to be our 12th event. Really, really looking forward to it. So if you want to join us, definitely check out the details at dualistiCunity.com. We are going to be continuing on for a shortened Patreon call today. Just an hour. It usually is an hour and a half on Thursdays. But as I said, we're taking the week off. So we will be back on Wednesday next week. If you don't catch us in the Patreon call after this, because we are going camping after the weekend. That's going to be a lot of fun. And we intend to come back feeling, well, natural.
Renewed, refreshed.
Yeah, coming back from camping last time, there was definitely that sense of being more relaxed, more settled, just like being involved. Like, this is it right here. This is what we're doing. This is what we got. This is the moment. That's it. It's like, what do you want to do with it? What do you want to explore? Where do you want to take it? What do you want? And sometimes I'll say that, like, just talk about taking it somewhere, but and won't. And then it's like, yeah, it's kind of talking about taking it somewhere, but yeah, I'm also noticing just how seriously I've taken myself throughout my life and how unnecessary that is. Like, it doesn't do any good to do it. Like,
No.
It's just silly and absurd. Like, are you gonna do that your whole life? Take yourself seriously?
Yes, damn it.
Yeah, it's important.
Right.
I do these things and I maintain this thing.
But you can't know the car won't drive if you don't really try to drive it when it has no wheels. Like, you can't, it's got no tires. You got to know for sure it won't drive.
Yeah, I gotta get those tires on there.
You appreciate tires so much more when you have them next time.
Yeah.
We got a
That's
few
fair.
questions here.
Oh, bring it on.
This one's kind of a quick one. What are some spiritual teachers you guys like reading / listening to?
Alan Watts. I've always appreciated his lightness that he takes everything with.
Straight up.
Ram Dass.
Very nice. No. That was my answer. Another question here. This one's always fun. Are you guys vegan? I would argue that nobody really is. I mean, regardless of how you might eat or what your diet might be, it really doesn't change you as a human being not being anything. So I think it's just an identity, and it has the same consequences as any other identity. It might make you feel good and self-righteous and give you a sense of value and purpose and meaning and so on and so forth. But ultimately, it's divisive, and it causes you to judge everybody who's not doing the same thing you are. So that would be, I think, the danger in that. But that said, I would say that it is important to be aware and compassionate and empathetic, but I don't think that line stops at the animal marker and then ignores plant life or anything else, because as we know, plant life is sentient and does actually have an awareness. It communicates, it's able to see in some instances. Trees, for example, can actually tell what color shirt you're wearing. Plants communicate under the ground in subaudible noises. They have their own language. In some cases, they're able to identify certain concepts. Veganism is not a diet. It straight up is. I mean, to say it's not a diet is ignoring the fact that it's strictly about what you're eating.
Kind of right there.
Dietary
maybe
restrictions.
it's a lifestyle, I think.
But again,
but it's like
a lifestyle based on what you're eating.
Exactly.
Therefore, it's still a diet.
Yeah.
But I would agree. Veganism is not a diet. I would say it's just another ego.
It's another way to label yourself again.
And judge others. And oversimplify the problem of our existence on this planet. Obviously, all of this comes down to the fact that we're still eating meat as opposed to being divisive.
Yeah, because, it's life. I mean, life feeds life. Like, that makes total sense. And it doesn't matter if you're picking animal life or plant life. Life is still feeding life. And it's like, it just, it doesn't need to be this bad thing.
See, there it is.
Plants are alive.
There's the self-righteous. Veganism is an ethical stand against enslavement, torture, murder of innocent sentient beings.
The trees would disagree.
Yeah, absolutely.
So would the grass.
Absolutely, but you're not going to look at that because it doesn't help you self-define. It doesn't help you feel better than other people. It doesn't help you feel self-righteous. Like, everything you said there just sounds kind of desperate and needy. It really does, and at the same time divisive, because you're not doing anything to change your relationship with other people. Instead, you're taking a stand that allows you to vilify other people. And I don't know if you've noticed, but one of the biggest problems we have on this planet is our divisive nature and the mentality that drives it. So while I would say that it is important to, be kind and empathetic to animals, I would say that you're making a line in the sand that allows you to conveniently make it about you and to give yourself a platform to judge other people. And I think you're perpetuating the very problem that you're trying to solve. You want to make the world a better place, but you're the problem. It's not what we eat, it's you. And until you come to terms with that, nothing's going to change. But you don't want to come to terms with that. So you'll pick a silver bullet, something that's simple and applicable. You can do it today by just not doing something or doing something. And then that makes you feel better about your life and the purpose that you have and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. You still judge yourself. You still judge others. You still doubt yourself. You still doubt others. You still hold yourself back or don't express yourself. You still do all of these things just because you're trying to be something. And that need to be something that has more value, is doing the right thing, blah, 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 is divisive. It's the reason that we can't all get along. It's the reason we can't see each other. It's because we're too busy looking at ourselves, trying to define ourselves. But I do appreciate the question. We are down to the last 30 seconds here. So I just want to say thanks again, everyone. This has been Raw, episode 199. We will be back next Wednesday for a free group chat. You can join us 6 p.m. Eastern time.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next